alcohol has, for centuries, been an integral part of most societies. People accept it as a normal part of our culture and dance around the issue that other people are at risk, but they're not. Big open water.
At San Diego's VA hospital, Dr. Mark Schuckett has been conducting a landmark study into who is at risk for alcoholism.
Got about how many more minutes?
For 2 decades, he has tracked a group of 450 men to determine who will become an alcoholic.
Kind of interesting. Just watch what your own reactions to things are. To develop a problem with alcohol or other drugs, it's a combination of biological vulnerability and environment. I'd like to study both. It turns out that the biology is a little easier to study than the effects of the environment.
Now, when you pick up your feet there, march in place a little bit.
Each new volunteer is given alcohol, followed by tests that measure body sway and brain waves,
Feet again.
motor function, and memory.
Steady as you can now. Here we go.
We looked for a theme. That is there a characteristic that people might be inheriting that increases the risk for alcoholism?
Try to remember as many as you can. So go ahead and look at the screen there. Here we go.
Schuckett has found that those with the proverbial hollow leg, who at first could drink and drink without showing serious effect, were more likely to be headed for trouble down the road.
Valley. I got Valley.
So what we did is started a study to try and see whether it's possible that as a group, children of alcoholics would show a low level of response to alcohol.
They did. An initial low response to alcohol, combined with a family history of alcoholism, can be a double whammy.
If you were a son of an alcoholic with a pretty good sensitivity to booze, you got pretty high with a modest amount of alcohol, your risk for alcoholism 10 years later was about 15%. That isn't zero, it's 15%. Whereas if you were a son of an alcoholic with this very low response to alcohol, the risk was 60%. That's 60% alcoholism risk, even though these guys had all been highly functional, they had jobs, or they were in school at the time that we originally tested them.
I just drank and drank and drank, 26 beers in one sitting, and right, there's no big deal.
Number one, it runs in families, which doesn't tell you genetics or environment, but says there's something there worth looking at.
So how much higher, then, is the risk of alcoholism among the children of alcoholics? Fourfold.
Yes.
The second bit of information regarding genetics.
Schuckett is professor of psychiatry at the University of California, San Diego's medical school. He alerts aspiring doctors to the significance of the family tree when diagnosing and treating alcoholism.
Identical twins, one of whom is alcoholic, have a much higher risk for alcoholism in the second twin.
His own study of adoption and addiction is now part of the scientific canon.
The third, I think most convincing, is that adopted away sons and daughters of alcoholics still have that fourfold increased risk for alcoholism, even when raised by non-alcoholics.
So if we look at his pattern of use of alcohol, we see problems in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories.
Schuckett and his research group are currently conducting thousands of in-depth interviews with alcoholics and their families.
Did we finish off the
It's part of a 6-city, multi-million-dollar genetic study with other researchers in the field that's funded by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. While the genetic search on alcoholism digs deeper, several risk factors, genetic and cultural, are already apparent.
Are they people who are relatively impulsive and easily bored? Probably higher risk for alcoholism. Are they people with a low level of response to alcohol? Probably higher risk for alcoholism. Are they people who come from traditions of never drinking or never drinking to the point of drunkenness? An environmental factor that probably decreases any predisposition that's there. But the real risk factor, tell me your family history of alcoholism.
So you're not saying that anyone is destined to become an alcoholic?
No. Even if we're talking about your mother and father were alcoholic and your families were loaded with alcoholism, the risk is still about 60%, as a rough guess. So nobody is predestined to become an alcoholic that I can think of. But every enters life with various levels of vulnerability, some to diabetes, some to heart disease, some to cancer, some to alcohol dependence. And I think that knowing something about those vulnerabilities gives you the opportunity of taking the steps to minimize the chance that this thing is going to happen. If you know the causes, maybe you can find things that help people to avoid developing the problems. And by looking at causes, maybe you can find people who have unique needs in treatment.
The good news is most drug-related problems are reversible, or at least tremendously improvable, although it's a matter of trying to survive long enough for the body to be able to.
Schuckett is also clinical director at the Scripps McDonald Center, a private treatment facility in La Jolla, where Hal sought treatment in 1994.
I think that the genes probably explain 40% of the risk. And that other things that I don't understand, that are environmental and behavioral and learned, explain 60%.
I believe that I was born an alcoholic. I grew up in a family of alcoholics, and I don't think I had any choice. I think once I started drinking, I was going to be an alcoholic. Once I started using, I was going to be a drug addict.
Does the fact that the brain has been hijacked, does that relieve the addict of a moral responsibility, of accountability? Does it, I have a disease, my brain is doing this to me, there's nothing I can do.
Right. This is the downside of a disease model of addiction. People will say, well, nothing I can do, doc. I'd like to say no, but I'm just a helpless tool of my DNA. But the fact is that the brain is not just one thing or one sentence. So this critical part of the brain is altered. It's not working right. It is giving us a perverted sense of priorities. But it doesn't mean that the whole brain has been hijacked. We can still engage people and ask them to take responsibility for themselves. Now it's difficult, and I can tell you, even well-trained doctors sometimes really lose faith. But you have to be literally implacable. You must never give up with an addicted person. You have to come back again and again and again. Because, this is not a trivial thing that's happening in their brain. But you can still engage them. You can still treat them as a moral agent. Indeed, I think that success in getting people into treatment demands that you still treat them as a moral agent.
The stigma associated with drug abuse and addiction is one of the biggest problems we have in dealing with it. People hate addicts. Addicts commit crimes. People are nervous that addicts are going to do something to them. The truth is, though, an addict has an illness. Whether you like that person or not, you've got to deal with it as an illness.
Part of why people get so angry, and I believe this, when someone says to them, why don't you just stop? Because they don't have an answer. They don't know why they don't just stop. But when they go to treatment, they learn why they don't stop. And it makes sense to them.
What does it mean to realize that you have a disease called alcoholism?
For me, what it did was relieve me of shame. I don't have to be ashamed of what I am, of what I did. What I need to do is take the medicine. And the medicine is recovery.
And treatment is a kind of postgraduate course in what you have.
Yeah. It's like college. It's like walking into a schoolhouse.
Doctors say, no.
It's not about punishment, making them pay up. We believe that we have to focus on that which we can change. What we can change is the brain state.
What happens to the brain during treatment?
Well, we're not exactly sure. We are fairly certain from animal models that some of the adaptations, some of the changes in the brain caused by drugs reverse in a matter of weeks. Other changes take a longer time. These emotional memories that can be activated by reminders of the drug experience, these may really last a lifetime and require a great deal of vigilance from somebody who has been treated for drug abuse, lest they relapse even years after they've been treated.
People have to learn how to care for other people. People have to learn normal social skills over again. People have to learn how to be a responsible employee. Sometimes people have to learn work skills that they never acquired very well in the first place. We can't put people, some of whom took drugs because they had life failures, back into a failure situation and expect them not to use drugs again.
It's quite a difference waking up and having some place to go, going to work, getting ready to go to work like everybody else, as opposed to waking up wondering where am I going to get my next drug from. I see a different Wendy. Yeah. Looking good, guys.
Interpersonal interactions have a profound effect on our nervous system. And we know that groups can create support and comfort, and there's something about supportive group interactions, something about belonging, which can create a powerful and safe holding environment. Literally, you are retraining your brain. You're learning new things so that you don't end up in this same old pit once again.
It's a lot of hard work. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, recovery. But it's also most rewarding. And I think that's something I've really learned in recovery is that the most rewarding things come with work. My addict mind wants that immediate gratification, wants something quick, and now I'm finding it doesn't come quick. Learn to climb a mountain in a weekend. You got to work. Hal Dunning was promoted last year to regional manager at a San Diego company 3 months after starting work there. It's been how many years now that you've been recovering and sober?
I'm working on 14 years a day at a time.
Wendy Walker last year became senior counselor at Hazelton, New York, a private treatment center.
What my immediate concern is when he comes in, put him on house safety. People are dying. Young people, old people, successful people, poor people. I don't believe anyone is making a choice to have this illness.
We need to understand everything from the molecule to managed care, because if we look for a silver bullet or a magic bullet, we will fail. This is the most complex phenomenon that's facing our society, and our strategy for dealing with it has got to be equally complex. We have to bring a multiple discipline approach to the problem, and that's what I hope the science will give us.